My name is Samantha, and at 27, I never expected to hit rock bottom at my own sister's wedding. But there I was, perched on a metal folding chair beside the restrooms while everyone else enjoyed beautiful place settings. Lauren always was the golden child, but this seating arrangement screamed volumes about my family's priorities. I planned to smile through it all, be the bigger person. Little did I know that my quiet dignity would crumble when unexpected eyes witnessed my humiliation. What happened next changed everything. Before I dive into this story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever felt like the family afterthought. Trust me, you'll want to see how this wedding disaster transformed my entire life. Growing up with Lauren was like living in perpetual second place. From the moment she was born, 3 years before me, she commanded the spotlight in our family. Our childhood home in suburban Pennsylvania was filled with trophies, certificates, and framed photos, almost all featuring Lauren's accomplishments. My own achievements gathered dust in drawers or were relegated to the refrigerator temporarily before disappearing altogether. Our parents, Thomas and Karen Wright, never tried to hide their favoritism. Dad, an accountant at a local firm, worked overtime to fund Lauren's dance classes, beauty pageants, and later, her expensive study abroad programs. Mom, a part-time real estate agent, dedicated her free time to chauffeuring Lauren to auditions and competitions. When I asked for similar opportunities, the response was always the same: "We just can't afford it right now, Samantha." Somehow, they always found money for Lauren. The pattern was established early. On my 8th birthday, I received a modest celebration with a homemade cake and a few small gifts. 2 months later, Lauren's 11th birthday featured a professionally catered party at the local country club with a hired magician and personalized party favors for 30 guests. When I asked why the disparity, Mom simply said, "Lauren has so many friends, sweetie. We couldn't disappoint them." School events highlighted the imbalance further. My parents attended every one of Lauren's choir performances and debate competitions, often taking off work to do so. For my science fair where I won second place district-wide, they sent their regrets. Dad had a critical meeting and Mom needed to drive Lauren to her dance rehearsal. The financial favoritism became more obvious as we grew older. Lauren received a brand new car for her 16th birthday, a sleek red Toyota that made her the envy of her friends. On my 16th, I was given the keys to Mom's 9-year-old Honda with the promise that I could use it when she didn't need it. Our younger brother Ryan, who arrived when I was 2, noticed the disparate treatment. At family dinners, he would pointedly ask why Lauren's achievements received standing ovations while mine merited only polite nods. His questions were usually dismissed with uncomfortable laughter or subject changes, but his awareness of the situation provided me some solace. At least someone else saw what was happening. "They're grooming her for something," Ryan once told me when we were teenagers, huddled in the backyard after another evening of the Lauren show at dinner. "It's like they're investing in her as their retirement plan." The theory wasn't far-fetched. Lauren was beautiful, charming when she wanted to be, and skilled at manipulating situations to her advantage. She knew how to work a room, make connections with influential people, and leverage relationships. Our parents beamed with pride as she networked her way through college and into an entry-level position at a prestigious marketing firm, a job secured largely through Dad's country club connections. My own path was different. I worked part-time jobs throughout high school to save for college, eventually earning a scholarship that covered about half of my tuition at the state university. I double-majored in education and psychology, working nights at the campus library to cover expenses. When I graduated with honors, my parents attended the ceremony but left immediately afterward, missing the departmental reception where I received an award for outstanding student teaching. Lauren had a hangover that day and needed their attention. The irony was that their constant favoritism shaped me into someone far more independent and resilient than Lauren ever became. I learned to solve my own problems, manage my finances, and build genuine relationships. After college, I secured a position as a school counselor in a district just 20 minutes from our hometown. I found an affordable apartment, adopted a rescue cat named Milo, and created a life that was modest but authentically mine. Lauren, meanwhile, bounced between jobs whenever they required actual work rather than networking. She lived in a luxury apartment our parents subsidized and drove a car they helped finance. Her social media portrayed a glamorous life, but Ryan and I knew the reality behind the filters. Lauren was deeply insecure and completely dependent on our parents' continued support. Despite everything, I maintained a cordial relationship with my family. Sunday dinners at our parents' house were mandatory, according to Mom, who insisted we maintain the appearance of a close-knit family. During these gatherings, Lauren would often make subtle digs at my career choice. "It's so sweet that you're content with such a small salary. My apartment, so cozy, like a little doll house," or my appearance, "have you thought about trying that new diet?" It did wonders for my friend Jessica. I learned to let these comments slide, recognizing that engaging would only make things worse. When Lauren announced her engagement to James Caldwell, son of a prominent local businessman and heir to a real estate development company, the Sunday dinner dynamic shifted entirely. Suddenly, every gathering became wedding planning central, with my input neither sought nor welcomed. "This is going to be the wedding of the season," Mom declared, stars in her eyes as she envisioned her golden child marrying into wealth and status. "Everyone who matters will be there." Little did I know just how accurately that statement would predict my place in the celebration. Lauren's engagement to James was a whirlwind affair that began with an elaborate proposal at the resort where his family owned property. James had arranged for a private dinner on the beach, complete with a string quartet, rose petals, and a photographer hidden nearby to capture the moment. The resulting photos flooded Lauren's social media within hours, garnering hundreds of comments and likes. I learned about the engagement through Instagram, not from my sister or parents. When I called to congratulate her, Lauren seemed surprised I'd reached out. "Oh, Samantha. Thanks for calling. We're having a little engagement celebration this weekend at the Caldwell estate. It's really just family and close friends," she said, her voice trailing off without extending an invitation. 2 days later, Ryan called me. "Did you get an invite to Lauren's engagement party?" "No," I replied, trying to mask the hurt in my voice. "She mentioned it was just family and close friends." Ryan's bitter laugh said everything. "Yeah, well, Mom just called to remind me about it. When I asked if you were coming, she got all weird and said they'd assumed you wouldn't want to attend because you're so busy with work." I told her that was bullshit. The next day, I received a text from Lauren. "Mom said you might want to come to the engagement party after all. Saturday at 7. Semi-formal. No address, no details, not even a complete sentence. I had to get the location from Ryan. The engagement party was held at the Caldwell family's sprawling colonial home in the most exclusive neighborhood in our area. I arrived wearing my best dress, a navy blue cocktail number I'd splurged on for a colleague's wedding. The house was filled with at least 60 people, despite Lauren's claim of just family and close friends. I spotted my parents immediately, circulating among guests with champagne flutes in hand, introducing themselves as the mother and father of the bride-to-be with theatrical pride. Lauren barely acknowledged my presence, offering a quick air kiss before returning to a conversation with James's mother. I found a quiet corner and nursed a glass of champagne, watching the social dynamics unfold. James, tall and conventionally handsome with sandy blonde hair and a confident smile, kept glancing my way with curiosity. Eventually, he approached and introduced himself. "You must be Samantha. Lauren hasn't mentioned much about you," he said with surprising candor. "That tracks," I replied with a small smile. "I'm the family's best-kept secret." He laughed, seemingly refreshed by my honesty. We chatted for a few minutes before Lauren materialized at his side, looping her arm through his possessively. "I see you've met my little sister," she said, emphasizing little despite my being only 3 years younger. "Sam works at a school. She's always been so good with children, probably because she's still kind of a kid herself." She laughed as if she'd made a charming joke. 2 weeks after the engagement party, Lauren called me with what sounded like an afterthought. "So, I suppose you should be a bridesmaid. Mom thinks it would look strange if you weren't." Wow, with an invitation like that, how could I possibly refuse? I replied, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. Don't be difficult, Sam. The wedding's in 6 months. Clear your calendar for dress fittings and stuff. The first bridesmaid gathering was at an upscale bridal boutique where Lauren had selected styles for her wedding party. Her 5 friends from college, all thin, polished women who worked in fashion, public relations, or finance, were already sipping champagne when I arrived. Everyone, this is my sister, Lauren said, not bothering with my name. Her friends offered perfunctory smiles before returning to their conversations. I stood awkwardly until the bridal consultant ushered us toward the dressing rooms. When the dresses appeared, I immediately noticed a discrepancy. While Lauren's friends received elegant floor-length gowns in a flattering sage green, my assigned dress was a different style in the same color, with cap sleeves that emphasized my broader shoulders and a cinched waist that highlighted the 15 pounds I carried over what Lauren considered acceptable. Are the dresses different? I asked quietly. We needed to make accommodations for your body type, Lauren replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. The designer suggested this would be more forgiving. The dress cost $450, which I was expected to pay myself, along with specific shoes, $200, professional hair and makeup for the wedding day, $350, and contributions to the bridal shower and bachelorette party, another $500 combined. For someone on a school counselor's salary, these expenses represented a significant financial strain, but any mention of this was met with eye rolls from Lauren and comments about budgeting priorities. The wedding planning meetings continued over the next several months, with my input systematically ignored or dismissed. I suggested a photographer whose work I admired. Lauren hired her college roommate's cousin instead. I offered to help create personalized favors to save money. Lauren declared my ideas too crafty and ordered custom engraved crystal ornaments at $30 each. The bachelorette party in Atlantic City was a nightmare of forced enthusiasm and financial pressure. Lauren's friends booked an expensive suite, arranged for VIP service at exclusive clubs, and planned activities that required additional fees at every turn. Throughout the weekend, I was the butt of their jokes, the prudish school counselor, the perpetual single girl, the less attractive right sister. Lauren did nothing to discourage their behavior. If anything, she seemed to enjoy watching me squirm. The worst moment came when I overheard Lauren talking to her friend Melissa in the hotel bathroom. They didn't realize I was in one of the stalls. God, I can't believe you had to include her in the wedding, Melissa said. Tell me about it. Mom insisted it would look bad if my only sister wasn't a bridesmaid. At least I made sure her dress won't upstage anyone else's. James asked why Sam and I aren't closer, and I had to explain how she's always been jealous of me. Such a sad, desperate person. I sat frozen, listening to my sister construct an entirely fictional narrative about our relationship to justify her treatment of me. According to Lauren, I had always envied her beauty and success, had tried to steal her boyfriends in high school, and had chosen a sad little career because I couldn't handle competition in the real world. When I emerged from the stall, their faces registered momentary shock before transforming into artificial smiles. Oh, Sam. We were just talking about the wedding, Lauren said smoothly. I simply washed my hands and left without a word. As the wedding approached, Lauren began dumping last-minute responsibilities on me, picking up welcome bags for out-of-town guests, confirming appointments with vendors, and addressing forgotten invitations. When I reminded her that I had a full-time job, she snapped, "Some of us manage real careers and wedding planning. I guess we can't all be superwoman." The rehearsal dinner, held at an upscale restaurant the night before the wedding, provided a preview of what was to come. While the rest of the wedding party and family were seated at a long table near the front of the private dining room, I found my name card at a small table near the kitchen door, alongside a few distant relatives of the groom whom no one had bothered to integrate into the main seating arrangement. After dinner, as guests mingled over dessert, I overheard my mother and Lauren talking in a quiet corner. "Are the seating arrangements finalized for the reception?" Mom asked. "Mostly," Lauren replied. "I'm still trying to figure out where to put Sam. She doesn't really fit at any of the main tables." Well, she can't be at the family table, there simply isn't room with all the Caldwells, Mom said. Maybe put her with your old neighbors or your father's work colleagues? Lauren shook her head. Those tables are all full with people who actually matter. Don't worry, I'll find somewhere to stick her. The important thing is keeping her away from James's family. You know how she gets when she's trying to impress people. I slipped away before they could see me, the knot in my stomach tightening as I realized just how little I meant to my own family. That night, in my childhood bedroom where I was staying to help with wedding preparations, I called Ryan. I don't think I can do this, I told him, fighting back tears. Sam, listen to me, he said firmly. Lauren is showing everyone exactly who she is. You just need to show up, hold your head high, and let people see the difference. I took a deep breath. You're right. One more day. I can handle anything for one day. If only I'd known what that day would bring. The morning of Lauren's wedding dawned bright and clear, perfect weather for the garden ceremony and tented reception planned at the Caldwell estate. I was up at 5:30 a.m., answering frantic texts from Lauren about everything from missing hairpins to concerns about the forecast, despite there being no clouds in sight. By 7 a.m., I had arrived at the estate's guest house where Lauren and the bridesmaids were getting ready. The scene was chaotic, makeup artists and hairstylists setting up their stations, Lauren's friends lounging in monogrammed silk robes while sipping mimosas, and my mother fluttering around adjusting flower arrangements and issuing orders to the staff. Oh good, you're here, Mom said when she spotted me. The welcome bags for the out-of-town guests never made it to the hotel. You need to drive over and deliver them before getting ready. But that's across town, I protested. The hair and makeup people are already here. They'll still be here when you get back, she replied dismissively. Lauren is stressed enough without having to worry about her guests not receiving their welcome gifts. I spent the next 2 hours hand-delivering gift bags to 3 different hotels while the other bridesmaids were being pampered. When I finally returned to the guest house, Lauren was in full meltdown mode over the shade of her lipstick. It's too pink, she wailed. I specifically asked for a warm nude tone. This makes me look like a teenager. I can fix it, the makeup artist assured her, looking exhausted. We have plenty of time. We do not have plenty of time. Lauren snapped. Everything needs to be perfect. I quietly took my place in the corner, waiting for my turn with the hairstylist. One of Lauren's friends noticed me and smirked. Cute outfit, she commented, eyeing my rumpled t-shirt and jeans. Unlike the others, I hadn't received a monogrammed robe. I've been running errands, I explained, though I didn't owe her an explanation. When the hairstylist finally called my name, Lauren intercepted. Actually, can you do Melissa's touch-up first? Sam just got here and hasn't even changed. This pattern continued throughout the morning. Every time my turn approached for hair or makeup, someone else's emergency took precedence. By the time the professional photographer arrived to capture the bridal party preparations, I was still waiting for my makeup to be done. Let's get some shots of the bride with her bridesmaids, the photographer suggested. Everyone gathered around Lauren in their matching robes, champagne flutes in hand, while I stood awkwardly to the side, still not ready. Sam, maybe sit this one out until you're dressed, my mother suggested. We want everything to look consistent. The photographer proceeded to take dozens of photos of the getting ready process, Lauren putting on her earrings, the bridesmaids helping with her veil, mother and daughter sharing a tearful moment, all carefully staged moments from which I was excluded. When it was finally time for the formal bridal party photos, I had managed to get my hair and makeup done, by the assistant, not the main stylist, and put on the unflattering bridesmaid dress. We gathered on the mansion's grand staircase, arranged according to Lauren's specific instructions. Somehow, I ended up positioned at the very end, partially hidden behind another bridesmaid. Can we make sure everyone is visible? The photographer asked. This composition is exactly what I want, Lauren insisted. Let's not waste time rearranging. During the family photos, I was initially left out entirely until James's father noticed. "Shouldn't Lauren's sister be in these shots?" he asked, looking confused. "Oh. Of course," my mother said with a forced laugh. "Sam, come join us." I took my place at the edge of the group, smiling mechanically as the photographer captured the family portrait. In the resulting image, I looked like an afterthought, which, I supposed, was accurate. Throughout all of this, I noticed James watching the dynamics with increasing discomfort. Several times, he attempted to intervene, suggesting I be included in certain photos or asking if I needed anything, only to be diverted by Lauren or my parents. Around noon, I received a text from Ryan. "How's it going? Surviving?" I stepped away from the chaos to call him. "Barely," I admitted. "I feel like an unwelcome stranger." "I'm sorry I'm not there," he said, his voice tight with guilt. The stomach bug excuse was cowardly, but I couldn't watch them treat you like this again. "I understand," I assured him. "Someone should escape this circus." "Remember what we talked about," Ryan said firmly. "Just get through today. You never have to do this again." After hanging up, I returned to find everyone in a flurry of last-minute preparations. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m., and guests were already arriving. Lauren was sequestered in the bridal suite with our mother and her maid of honor, while the rest of us received instructions from the wedding coordinator. "Samantha," she called, consulting her clipboard. "You'll be walking alone in the procession, right after the groomsman Miles." I nodded, having long ago accepted that I wouldn't have an escort. Lauren had insisted there be an equal number of bridesmaids and groomsmen, which meant either excluding me or adding another groomsman. Rather than ask James to include another friend, she'd simply arranged for me to walk alone. The garden ceremony went smoothly, at least from the guests' perspective. I played my part, walking slowly down the petal-strewn aisle, holding my bouquet at exactly the height specified in rehearsal, and taking my position at the end of the line of bridesmaids. From the outside, everything appeared elegant and meticulously planned. Inside, I was counting the minutes until I could leave. After the ceremony, while the bride and groom took additional photos, I helped direct guests toward the cocktail hour area. No one had assigned me this task, I simply noticed confused elderly relatives and stepped in. The wedding coordinator gave me a grateful nod as I escorted James's grandmother to a comfortable seat in the shade. "You're the sister, aren't you?" the elderly woman asked, studying me with sharp blue eyes. "Yes, I'm Samantha," I replied, offering her a glass of water. "Interesting," she said cryptically before her attention was diverted by another family member. As guests moved from the cocktail hour to the reception tent, I helped gather discarded programs and escort cards, straightened place settings that had been disturbed by the afternoon breeze, and made sure the gift table was organized. Again, these weren't my assigned duties, there was a staff for that, but keeping busy helped me manage my anxiety about what was coming. The reception venue was stunning, a massive clear-top tent decorated with thousands of twinkling lights, lush greenery, and centerpieces of white roses and hydrangeas. Each table featured gold chargers, crystal glassware, and personalized menus. The effect was breathtaking. As guests began finding their seats, I realized it was time to discover where exactly Lauren had decided to stick me. The reception tent was a vision of elegance. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over tables draped in ivory linens. A string quartet played softly in the corner as guests marveled at the opulent setting. The head table, positioned on a slightly raised platform, featured a cascading floral arrangement and gold-rimmed place settings. To either side, family tables were positioned prominently, with the Wrights on one side and the Caldwells on the other. I scanned the beautifully calligraphed place cards at the family table, looking for my name among my parents, aunts, and uncles. Nothing. Assuming there must be a mistake, I checked the surrounding tables. Perhaps I'd been seated with cousins or family friends. Again, no sign of my name. With growing unease, I approached the wedding coordinator, a professionally pleasant woman named Valerie who had been managing the day's events with clipboard efficiency. "Excuse me," I said quietly, not wanting to create a scene. "I can't seem to find my place card." Valerie's professional smile faltered slightly. She flipped through several pages on her clipboard, frowning. Let me see. Right. Samantha, right, she muttered. Her expression shifted from confusion to discomfort. Oh. Let me show you. She led me past all the elegantly arranged round tables, beyond the dance floor, past the dessert station, toward the far corner of the tent near the restroom entrance. There, partially hidden behind a service bar, sat a single metal folding chair with a small side table. No place card, no charger, no crystal glasses, just a plain white plate and basic silverware wrapped in a paper napkin. There must be some mistake, I said, staring at the lonely chair. Valerie's discomfort was palpable. I'm so sorry. These were the final seating arrangements approved by the bride yesterday. I assumed you knew. The realization crashed over me like ice water. This wasn't a mistake. This was deliberate. Lauren had literally placed me by the bathrooms, on a different style of chair than every other guest, with none of the beautiful table settings that adorned the rest of the reception. I see, I managed to say, my voice remarkably steady despite the humiliation burning through me. I can try to speak with the bride, Valerie offered hesitantly. No, I replied. That won't be necessary. As Valerie walked away, I stood frozen, trying to process what was happening. Guests were filling the tent now, finding their assigned seats, exclaiming over the beautiful decorations. Several people glanced curiously in my direction, no doubt wondering why someone in a bridesmaid dress was standing alone by the restrooms. I considered my options. I could leave, walk out of the tent, call a rideshare, and be home with Milo within an hour. I could confront Lauren and my parents, create the scene that part of me felt was long overdue. Or I could sit in the chair, eat my meal, and endure the final hours of this farce with as much dignity as possible. Ryan's words echoed in my mind, Lauren is showing everyone exactly who she is. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed my dress and sat down on the metal folding chair. The contrast between my seat and the luxurious chairs at every other table couldn't have been more stark. From my position, I could see the entire reception but was largely hidden from view, except by anyone heading to the restrooms. The first person to notice was a distant cousin who did a double take as she emerged from the ladies' room. Samantha? Why are you sitting all the way back here? This is where I've been placed, I replied simply. She looked confused, then embarrassed. Oh. Well, it was good to see you, she mumbled before hurrying back to her table. More guests began to notice. Whispers spread. I saw confused glances, furrowed brows, and uncomfortable shifting as people realized what was happening but didn't know how to respond. My parents, seated at their prominent table near the head table, seemed oblivious, or were choosing to be. James's friend Michael, whom I'd briefly met at the rehearsal dinner, walked past on his way to the restroom and stopped abruptly. Is everything okay? He asked, genuine concern in his voice. Everything's fine, I assured him with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Just enjoying my designated spot. He frowned, looking around at the nearby tables. This can't be right. Let me see if there's space at my table. Please don't, I said quietly. I'm okay, really. Michael hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the situation but respecting my wish not to make a scene. I'll check on you later, he promised before continuing to the restroom. As the reception proceeded, I sat alone at my little table, watching as servers delivered elaborate appetizers to the other guests. When one finally approached me, he looked confused by my isolated position. Would you like some of the past appetizers, miss? I think they missed you on their rounds. That would be lovely, thank you, I replied. The most significant moment came when James's grandmother, Eleanor Caldwell, the same sharp-eyed woman I'd helped during the cocktail hour, made her way toward the restrooms with the aid of her cane. She stopped when she saw me, taking in the folding chair and simplified place setting with a raised eyebrow. What's this? She asked bluntly. My assigned seat for the reception, I explained, trying to keep my voice light. Eleanor's eyes narrowed as she surveyed the scene. Without another word, she turned and made her way back toward the family tables, moving with surprising purpose for a woman in her 80s. I watched her approach James, who was standing near the head table talking with friends. She spoke to him intently, gesturing in my direction. James looked up, his expression changing from confusion to shock as he took in my isolated position. He immediately began walking toward me, only to be intercepted by Lauren, who placed a hand on his arm and whispered something urgent in his ear while glancing nervously at her new grandmother-in-law. The physical discomfort of the metal chair was nothing compared to the emotional pain of being so publicly excluded by my own family. Yet as I sat there, something unexpected began to happen. The humiliation I'd felt initially began to transform into a strange sense of clarity. For the first time, I was seeing my family's situation with complete objectivity, witnessed by a room full of people who were also seeing it clearly. Lauren hadn't just revealed who she was, she'd revealed who our entire family was. And in doing so, she'd inadvertently set me free. The reception program began with the introduction of the wedding party. The DJ enthusiastically announced each bridesmaid and groomsman as they entered the tent in pairs, ending with, "And now, for the first time, Mr. and Mrs. James Caldwell." Lauren and James made their grand entrance to applause and cheers, taking their places at the center of the head table. I noticed I had been completely skipped in the announcements, despite being a bridesmaid. It was as if I'd been erased from the wedding party entirely. Dinner service began shortly after. While guests at the regular tables were served by attentive waitstaff, I found myself forgotten until a confused server noticed me sitting alone. "I'm sorry, miss. I didn't realize anyone was seated here," he apologized, quickly bringing me a plate from the kitchen. The speeches came next. Lauren's maid of honor gave a gushing tribute to their friendship, followed by James's best man sharing amusing anecdotes about their college days. My father stood to give the father of the bride speech, glass raised high. "Today is the proudest day of my life," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "Watching my beautiful daughter marry into such a wonderful family is everything we've ever wanted for her." He continued with a lengthy account of Lauren's accomplishments, from her first dance recital to her college graduation, finishing with effusive praise for James and his family. We couldn't have asked for a better match for our perfect girl. Not once in his 10-minute speech did he mention his other daughter, the one who had spent the morning running errands, who had helped elderly guests find their seats, who was now sitting alone by the restrooms. It was as if I didn't exist. My mother's speech followed a similar pattern, thanking everyone who had contributed to the perfect day for our perfect daughter without a single acknowledgement of my existence. I maintained my composure, sipping water and keeping my expression neutral despite the ache in my chest. As the formal dinner concluded, the staff began clearing plates. When they reached the family tables, I noticed a commotion. One of the servers had accidentally spilled a glass of red wine on the tablecloth. Lauren immediately began berating the young man, her voice carrying across the tent. "Are you completely incompetent? This is the most important day of my life, and you're ruining it." The server, looking mortified, apologized profusely while trying to clean up the spill. Lauren continued her tirade until James gently intervened, placing a hand on her arm and whispering something in her ear. She stopped mid-sentence, composing herself with visible effort before turning away with a dismissive wave. The incident had drawn attention, and I noticed several guests exchanging uncomfortable glances. James's father looked particularly displeased, while Eleanor Caldwell watched with narrowed eyes. As the dance floor opened and guests began to mingle more freely, I decided to help myself to a piece of wedding cake, which had been ceremonially cut but not yet served to guests. I made my way to the dessert table, where a staff member was struggling to keep up with the demand. "Need some help?" I offered, seeing her overwhelmed expression. "That would be amazing," she said gratefully. One of our servers called in sick. I stepped behind the table and began plating slices of cake, handing them to guests with a smile. It felt good to be useful, to be interacting with people rather than sitting alone in my corner. Several guests thanked me, unaware that I was a member of the bridal party rather than catering staff. I was in the middle of serving an elderly couple when Lauren spotted me. She marched over, her white gown swishing dramatically. "What are you doing?" she hissed, keeping her voice low but intense. "Helping," I replied simply. "You're embarrassing me," she snapped. "Get back to your seat." "They're short-staffed," I explained. "I'm just trying to be helpful." Lauren's eyes narrowed. "Always the martyr, aren't you? Always finding ways to make yourself look good at my expense." Before I could respond, she turned abruptly, her elbow catching a plate of cake in my hand. The plate tipped, sending a large slice of white cake with raspberry filling directly onto the bodice of my bridesmaid dress. "Oh my God!" Lauren exclaimed loudly, her hand flying to her mouth in exaggerated shock. "Sam, you're so clumsy." Several nearby guests turned to look, taking in the scene, Lauren in her pristine wedding gown, me with cake smeared down the front of my dress. "Here, let me help," Lauren said, grabbing a napkin and dabbing at the stain in a way that only spread it further. Her performance of sisterly concern was flawless, but her eyes held a gleam of satisfaction. "I've got it," I said, stepping back and taking the napkin from her. "You should get back to your guests." Lauren hesitated, clearly enjoying my discomfort, before giving a theatrical sigh. "If you're sure. Try to clean up before the photographer wants more pictures." She swept away, immediately engaging a group of guests with animated conversation as if nothing had happened. I made my way to the restroom, passing several people who averted their eyes in secondhand embarrassment. In the restroom, I did my best to clean the cake from my dress, but the damage was done, an unmistakable pink stain spread across the sage-green fabric. As I worked, I overheard two guests talking at the sinks. "Did you see where they seated the sister?" one woman whispered. "A folding chair by the bathrooms." "Can you imagine?" "I know," her companion replied. "And she's a bridesmaid." "My cousin went to high school with both of them. Says the parents have always favored Lauren. Still, this seems extreme even for them. The groom looks uncomfortable with the whole thing. Did you see his face when his grandmother pointed it out to him?" I emerged from the stall, and both women fell silent, their expressions mortified at being caught gossiping. I smiled politely as I washed my hands. "It's a beautiful wedding," I said mildly, before exiting the restroom. As I made my way back to my folding chair, I noticed James watching me from across the room, his brow furrowed with concern. He started toward me but was once again intercepted by Lauren, who steered him toward a group of her friends. I sat down, the stained dress adding another layer to my humiliation. My plan to eat quickly and leave was looking better by the minute. The DJ announced the father-daughter dance, and I watched as my father proudly led Lauren onto the dance floor. They swayed to butterfly kisses, my father looking at his favorite daughter with adoration while guests took photos and videos. When the dance concluded, dinner service had officially ended. I sat at my small table, picking at my barely touched meal, planning my exit strategy. The tent had grown warm, and the metal chair was uncomfortable. A few more hours, I told myself. Just get through a few more hours. I was so lost in thought that I didn't notice Eleanor Caldwell approaching until she was standing directly in front of me, leaning slightly on her cane. "Young lady," she said in a voice that commanded attention despite its age. "I believe we need to have a conversation." Eleanor Caldwell stood before me with the regal bearing of someone accustomed to being respected. Despite being in her 80s, she exuded an unmistakable air of authority. Without waiting for an invitation, she signaled to a nearby server. "Young man, please bring another chair. A proper one, not this metal contraption." Her tone left no room for argument. The server quickly complied, bringing over one of the elegant Chiavari chairs from an empty table. Eleanor lowered herself into it with dignity, adjusting her position to face me directly. "Now then," she said, her piercing blue eyes, so similar to James's, studying me intently. "I've been observing you all day, Samantha Wright. And I've been hearing quite a lot about you from various sources." I tensed, expecting more criticism or awkward pity. "I'm sorry if I've done something to." Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. "Stop apologizing. That's the first thing you need to unlearn. I blinked, taken aback by her directness. I've spent 84 years watching family dynamics, she continued. And I know toxic patterns when I see them. Your sister and parents should be ashamed of themselves. Her bluntness was refreshing after years of people politely ignoring or enabling my family's behavior. It's complicated, I offered weakly. It's not complicated at all, Eleanor corrected me firmly. It's quite simple, actually. Some people build their sense of worth by diminishing others. Your sister strikes me as deeply insecure, despite all her posturing. And your parents have enabled this dynamic until it's become their normal. She paused, glancing around the reception before continuing in a slightly lowered voice. I raised 3 children and have 7 grandchildren. Family relationships have their challenges, of course. But what I've witnessed today goes beyond normal family tension. This is systematic exclusion, and it's not accidental. The validation from this formidable woman, a complete stranger until today, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I blinked them back, determined not to add crying to the day's humiliations. The question now, Eleanor continued, apparently unfazed by my emotional reaction, is what you're going to do about it. Do? I echoed, confused. Yes, do. You have choices, Samantha. You always have, though they've convinced you otherwise. Before I could respond, we were joined by an elegantly dressed woman in her 50s, Eleanor's daughter and James's mother, Patricia Caldwell. Mother, is everything all right? Patricia asked, her eyes moving curiously between Eleanor and me. Sit down, Patricia, Eleanor instructed. I want you to meet Lauren's sister properly. The family hasn't bothered with introductions. Patricia hesitated only briefly before signaling for another chair. As she sat down, Eleanor made formal introductions as if we were at a garden party rather than hidden away in the corner of a wedding reception. Samantha was just telling me about her work as a school counselor, Eleanor invented smoothly. Such important work, helping young people navigate their challenges. Patricia smiled warmly. James mentioned you work with children. That must be very rewarding. Our unlikely gathering soon attracted attention. James's father Harold joined us, followed by James's brother Thomas and his wife. Each time someone approached, Eleanor would imperiously request another proper chair, until our little corner had transformed into an impromptu Caldwell family gathering. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. While my own family had relegated me to isolation, James's family was now deliberately seeking me out. I found myself engaged in genuine conversation about my career, my interests, and my perspectives. They listened attentively, asked thoughtful questions, and treated me with a respect I rarely experienced from my own relatives. From across the tent, I could see Lauren watching with growing alarm. She whispered urgently to my mother, who kept glancing our way with a strained expression. The power dynamic was shifting in a way they clearly hadn't anticipated. Eventually, James himself made his way over, his expression a mixture of concern and curiosity. Is everything okay over here? He asked, his eyes meeting mine apologetically. Everything is wonderful, Eleanor declared. We're finally getting to know your new sister-in-law properly. Though I must say, James, I'm disappointed in the seating arrangements. Were you aware of this situation? James's face flushed. No, I wasn't. The final seating chart was handled by Lauren and her mother. Well, it's appalling, Eleanor stated flatly. No one in our family treats guests this way, let alone family members. James looked genuinely distressed. Samantha, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. Of course you didn't, dear, Eleanor patted his hand. But now you do. And knowledge comes with responsibility. The implication hung in the air, creating a moment of uncomfortable silence. Would you prefer to join us at the family table? James offered, his expression sincere. Before I could respond, Eleanor spoke up. I think we're quite comfortable right here. In fact, I prefer this arrangement. Less formal, better conversation. She fixed James with a meaningful look. Sometimes the places were relegated to become the places of honor, wouldn't you agree? James seemed to understand something profound in his grandmother's words. He nodded slowly before turning to me. May I borrow a chair as well? Our gathering continued to grow, creating a focal point that was impossible to ignore. Guests began to whisper, looking between our corner and the increasingly tense head table. Lauren was now in intense conversation with both my parents, their expressions a mixture of anger and embarrassment. As Eleanor held court, telling stories about the Caldwell family history and asking me thoughtful questions about my life, I felt a strange sense of vindication washing over me. For the first time, I wasn't desperately seeking my family's approval or inclusion. Instead, I was being valued for exactly who I was by people who had no obligation to care about me. The tension finally broke when Eleanor, after checking her elegant wristwatch, announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, don't you?" She rose from her chair with surprising agility, using her cane more as a prop than a necessity. "James, be a dear and ask Lauren and her parents to join us. I believe we need to have a family discussion." James hesitated, clearly torn between his grandmother's request and his new wife's obvious reluctance. "Now, James," Eleanor added firmly. "Some things shouldn't wait, and respect is one of them." As James made his way to the head table, I felt a momentary panic. "Mrs. Caldwell, please, this isn't necessary. It's Lauren's day, Anne." This stopped being just Lauren's day the moment she decided to humiliate her sister in front of 200 guests, Eleanor interrupted. "Sometimes lessons need to be learned publicly when the offense was public." Patricia touched my arm gently. "My mother can be rather direct," she said apologetically. "But her heart is in the right place." I watched as James spoke to Lauren, whose face cycled through expressions of disbelief, anger, and finally forced composure. My parents looked equally discomfited as they reluctantly followed Lauren and James toward our corner. The gathering crowd sensed something significant happening. Conversations quieted as attention shifted to the unfolding drama. By the time Lauren, James, and my parents reached us, we had an audience of at least 50 guests within earshot. Eleanor smiled pleasantly, as if this were exactly what she'd intended all along. "Lauren, dear," she began in a voice that carried clearly. "I'd like to know why your only sister is seated on a folding chair by the restrooms while every other guest enjoys proper accommodations." The question hung in the air like a thunderclap, and in that moment, I realized we had reached a point of no return. Lauren's face flushed crimson as she registered both Eleanor's question and the attentive audience surrounding us. For perhaps the first time in her life, my sister found herself without a ready excuse or deflection. There was a last-minute change in the seating arrangements," she stammered. "It was just a misunderstanding with the wedding coordinator." Eleanor's eyebrow arched skeptically. "A misunderstanding that resulted in the bride's sister and bridesmaid being seated alone on a metal chair by the restrooms? How peculiar." My mother stepped forward, her social smile firmly in place despite the tension radiating from her. "Mrs. Caldwell, I'm sure we can sort this out privately. Today is supposed to be a celebration." "Indeed it is," Eleanor agreed pleasantly. "A celebration of two families joining together. Which is why I find it so troubling to see a member of one of those families treated with such blatant disrespect." By now, the circle of onlookers had grown larger. The DJ had lowered the music, sensing the unfolding drama. James stood uncomfortably between his grandmother and his new wife, looking increasingly distressed. "Samantha understands her place," my father said stiffly, attempting to regain control of the situation. "We don't need to make a scene about seating arrangements." His choice of words, "her place," sent a ripple of murmurs through the watching guests. Eleanor's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Her place," she repeated, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent tent. "And what exactly is her place, Mr. Wright?" "Because in my family, a daughter's place is one of honor, regardless of whether she's the bride or not." James finally spoke up, his voice steady despite his obvious discomfort. "Lauren, did you really arrange for Samantha to sit alone by the bathrooms?" Lauren's composure began to crack. you don't understand. She always does this, tries to make everything about her. I just wanted one day where I didn't have to worry about her stealing attention. By stealing attention, do you mean existing? Eleanor asked pointedly. Because I've been observing Samantha all day, and all I've seen is a young woman helping elderly guests, assisting short-staffed servers, and enduring humiliation with remarkable grace. Several guests nodded in agreement, including the elderly couple I'd helped to their seats before the ceremony. The server I'd assisted with cake distribution called out, she volunteered to help when we were short-staffed. Didn't even mention she was family. Lauren's eyes darted around, realizing she was losing control of the narrative. This is my wedding day, she hissed, dropping all pretense of composure. Everything was perfect until you started stirring up drama. Perfect for whom? Eleanor challenged. Certainly not for your sister, who has been systematically excluded and humiliated throughout the day. My mother attempted another intervention. Mrs. Caldwell, with all due respect, you don't understand our family dynamics. Samantha has always been difficult. This blatant falsehood was too much for James's best friend Michael, who had been watching from nearby. He stepped forward, addressing my parents directly. Difficult? I've been watching all day as she ran errands, helped guests, and smiled through being treated like she didn't exist. When the cake incident happened, she didn't make a scene even though it was clearly deliberate. How exactly is that difficult? My father's face darkened. You don't know what you're talking about, young man. This is a private family matter. It ceased to be private when you chose to humiliate your daughter in front of 200 people, Eleanor stated firmly. James, what do you make of all this? All eyes turned to James, who looked torn between loyalty to his new wife and the growing evidence of wrongdoing. I think everyone deserves to be treated with respect, he said carefully. Especially family. Lauren latched onto his arm. James, you're my husband now. You need to support me. Support you in what, exactly? He asked quietly. In treating your sister like she doesn't matter? A hush fell over the gathering. Lauren's carefully constructed facade was crumbling in real time, and everyone could see it. I had remained silent throughout this exchange, overwhelmed by the public nature of the confrontation I'd spent my life avoiding. But as I watched my sister's manipulative tactics failing in real time, something shifted inside me. The shame and embarrassment I'd carried for years began to transform into a quiet, steady resolve. I stood up, smoothing my stained bridesmaid dress. May I say something? All eyes turned to me. Eleanor nodded encouragingly, while my parents looked alarmed. I've spent my entire life trying not to rock the boat, I began, my voice stronger than I expected. I've accepted being the afterthought, the inconvenience, the one who gets less attention, less support, less love. I told myself it was fine, that family dynamics are complicated, that maybe I was imagining things. I paused, looking around at the sea of attentive faces. But seeing everyone's reaction today, I realize I wasn't imagining anything. The way I've been treated isn't normal or acceptable. It never was. Lauren attempted to interrupt, but James placed a gentle hand on her arm, silencing her. I don't want revenge or drama, I continued. I just want acknowledgement of the truth. And the truth is, I've never been valued in my family the way a daughter and sister should be. My words hung in the air, simple but powerful in their honesty. Several guests nodded in understanding, some wiping away tears. James's relatives looked on with expressions ranging from sympathy to outrage on my behalf. My father, sensing the tide of public opinion turning against them, attempted damage control. Samantha has always had a flair for dramatics. We've given her everything. That's not true, a voice called out. Ryan, my brother, pushed through the crowd, his face flushed as if he'd been running. And you know it's not true. Ryan? I gasped, shocked to see him. I thought you were sick. I couldn't stay away after all, he said, moving to stand beside me. Not when I kept thinking about what they'd do to you today. He turned to address the crowd. Our parents have favored Lauren our entire lives. Sam's school events were skipped so they could attend Lauren's. Sam worked her way through college while they paid Lauren's full tuition. When Sam won academic awards, they barely noticed, but when Lauren got a promotion last year, they threw a party. My mother's face had gone pale. "Ryan, that's enough." "No, it's not enough," he insisted. "It's never been enough. Sam has spent her life being treated like she doesn't matter, and I've spent mine watching it happen and feeling helpless to stop it." The photographer, who had been discreetly capturing the unfolding scene, spoke up unexpectedly. "I have evidence of what the brother is saying. All day, I was instructed to focus on certain family members and exclude others. It was explicitly stated that Samantha should be minimized in the wedding documentation." This revelation caused another wave of murmurs through the crowd. Lauren looked as if she might explode with rage, while my parents appeared increasingly cornered. Eleanor Caldwell raised her hand, commanding attention once more. "I believe we've heard enough. James, I think you need to consider what kind of family you've married into and what values they represent." James looked deeply troubled, the full weight of the situation finally sinking in. He turned to Lauren. "Did you really do all this deliberately? Tell me honestly." Lauren's mask slipped completely. "She's always been jealous of me. Always trying to steal my spotlight. I just wanted one day where everything was about me." "But it was about you," James said quietly. "Every detail of this wedding was planned to your specifications. The flowers, the music, the food, everything. How would treating your sister with basic dignity have diminished any of that?" Lauren had no answer, her self-centered logic exposed for what it was. My parents, seeing their golden child floundering, attempted to intervene once more. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion privately," my mother suggested desperately. "I think we're well past that point," Eleanor replied. She turned to address the gathered guests. "The Caldwell family has always valued integrity, compassion, and family loyalty above all else. What we've witnessed today falls woefully short of those values. I apologize to everyone present for this unfortunate display, but sometimes truths need to be revealed before healing can begin." With those words, the public reckoning reached its crescendo. What had started with a folding chair by the bathrooms had transformed into a moment of reckoning for my entire family. As I stood there, supported by Ryan on one side and the unexpected alliance of the Caldwell family on the other, I felt something I'd never experienced before in relation to my family: power. Not the power to hurt or humiliate, as Lauren had wielded against me, but the power of truth finally acknowledged. The years of gaslighting, dismissal, and emotional neglect had been exposed to the light, witnessed and validated by a room full of people who could see the situation clearly. James pulled Lauren aside, their intense conversation visible but not audible to the crowd. My parents stood frozen, their carefully cultivated image of the perfect family shattered beyond repair. And I, the daughter they had treated as an afterthought for 27 years, finally stopped shrinking to accommodate their narrative. As the crowd began to disperse, returning to their tables in subdued conversations, Eleanor Caldwell took my hand. "Remember this moment," she said quietly. "Not for the pain or vindication, but for the freedom it gives you moving forward." I nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Whatever happened next, I would never again doubt my own worth or accept treatment that diminished it. The folding chair by the bathrooms had been meant as my final humiliation, but instead, it had become the catalyst for my liberation. 1 month after Lauren's wedding, I was organizing files in my office at school when the receptionist called to inform me that a package had arrived. I wasn't expecting anything, so I was curious as I signed for the large manila envelope. Back at my desk, I opened it to find a collection of photographs from the wedding, not the formal, posed shots that would have been included in Lauren's official album, but candid moments captured throughout the day. There was no note, just a small card with the photographer's logo. As I flipped through the images, the story they told was unmistakable. There I was, helping James's elderly relatives find their seats before the ceremony. Arranging welcome bags that Lauren had forgotten. fixing a flower girl's dress when she tripped, serving cake when the catering staff was short-handed. And finally, the series of photos documenting the incident, my isolated folding chair, Eleanor joining me, the gathering of the Caldwell family, and the confrontation that followed. The photographer had captured it all, including the expressions on my family's faces as their treatment of me was exposed. My parents' tight, defensive postures. Lauren's progression from dismissive to furious. And my own transformation from resigned acceptance to dignified strength. I wasn't sure why the photographer had sent these to me, but I was grateful for the validation they provided. Sometimes seeing yourself through someone else's lens helps you recognize your own truth. A week later, a second unexpected delivery arrived, this time, a letter from James. I hesitated before opening it, unsure what to expect. "Dear Samantha," it began. "I want to apologize for my role in what happened at the wedding. While I wasn't aware of the seating arrangement or other deliberate exclusions, my ignorance doesn't excuse the hurt you experienced. I should have been more attentive and questioned things that, in retrospect, were clearly wrong." He continued, explaining that he and Lauren had separated shortly after returning from their honeymoon. "The wedding day revealed aspects of Lauren's character and your family's dynamics that I couldn't ignore. When I tried to discuss it, Lauren refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. She insisted that you had somehow manipulated everyone into taking your side, which I knew wasn't true. I realized I couldn't build a life with someone whose values differed so fundamentally from my own." His letter concluded with a hope that I was doing well and an assurance that his family still spoke of me with great respect. "Grandmother Eleanor asks about you often. She says you showed more grace under pressure than most people show in a lifetime. I believe she's right." I set the letter aside, processing this unexpected development. I felt no satisfaction in James and Lauren's separation, only sadness that Lauren's inability to recognize her behavior had cost her what could have been a good marriage. Over the following weeks, more surprises followed. An invitation to dinner from Patricia and Harold Caldwell, who explained that they enjoyed my company and would like to maintain a connection regardless of James and Lauren's situation. A thoughtful email from Michael, James's friend, checking in and offering friendship. And most surprisingly, several Caldwell family members began referring their friends with school-aged children to me for counseling consultations, expanding my professional network considerably. Meanwhile, my own family was struggling with the fallout. Lauren had moved back in with our parents, from where she launched regular social media tirades about betrayal and loyalty without ever mentioning specifics. My parents made several awkward attempts to contact me, leaving voicemails that ranged from defensive, "We never meant to make you feel excluded," to accusatory, "Your brother and you have always teamed up against your sister." Ryan was the only family member I maintained regular contact with. He had finally set firm boundaries with our parents, refusing to participate in their revisionist version of events. "They keep asking if I've heard from you," he told me during one of our weekly coffee meetups. "I think they're realizing what they've lost, but they still can't admit they were wrong." "Do you think they'll ever change?" I asked. Ryan shrugged. "Maybe. But it's not your job to wait around hoping for it. You've got your own life to live." He was right. In the weeks since the wedding, I had begun making changes I'd been hesitant to pursue before. I applied for a promotion at work that would involve developing a new counseling program for the district. I enrolled in a weekend art class I'd been interested in for years but had always talked myself out of. I even adopted a second cat to keep Milo company, naming her Eleanor in a private tribute to the formidable woman who had stood up for me. The most unexpected development in my post-wedding life came from Michael. What had begun as supportive check-ins evolved into lengthy conversations about books, movies, and eventually, more personal topics. He was easy to talk to, thoughtful and funny without trying too hard. When he finally asked if I'd like to have dinner sometime, it felt like the natural next step. Our first date lasted 5 hours, conversation flowing effortlessly as we discovered shared values and complementary differences. Unlike many men I dated in the past, Michael showed genuine interest in my work as a counselor, asking insightful questions and listening attentively to my answers. He spoke of his own career in architectural design with passion but without ego, describing the satisfaction of creating spaces that served people's needs both functionally and aesthetically. By our third date, I had shared the full story of my family dynamics, including the parts too painful to discuss with casual acquaintances. Michael listened without judgment, occasionally asking clarifying questions but mostly just creating space for my narrative. "You know," he said thoughtfully when I'd finished, "what strikes me most is how you've managed to become such a compassionate person despite not receiving much compassion from your family. That's remarkable." His observation touched me deeply. I had spent so many years focusing on what I lacked from my family that I hadn't fully recognized what I had managed to create within myself. 6 months after the wedding, Ryan suggested hosting a small dinner party at his apartment. "Nothing fancy," he assured me. "Just some good food and people who actually care about us." The evening was warm and lively, with an eclectic guest list that included Ryan's colleagues, Michael, and surprisingly, Eleanor Caldwell, who had maintained correspondence with me since the wedding. At 84, she remained sharp as ever, regaling us with stories from her years as one of the few female executives in her field during the 1960s. "The key to a good life," she told us over dessert, "is recognizing the family you're born into versus the family you choose. Sometimes they overlap. Often they don't." She raised her glass in a toast to chosen family. As we all clinked glasses, I felt a profound sense of rightness. Looking around the table at these people who valued me exactly as I was, not as an afterthought or an inconvenience, but as someone worthy of respect and affection, I realized I had found my true place. The following week, a small package arrived at my apartment. Inside was an antique silver locket on a delicate chain, along with a note in Eleanor's elegant handwriting. "To Samantha, this locket has been passed down through generations of Caldwell women, traditionally given to daughters who embody the family values of integrity, courage, and grace. Though not a Caldwell by blood, you have demonstrated these qualities more profoundly than many who bear the name. Wear it as a reminder that family is defined by love and respect, not merely by birth. With affection and admiration, Eleanor." As I fastened the locket around my neck, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From a folding chair by the bathroom to standing firmly in my own worth. From accepting scraps of attention to building relationships based on mutual respect. From shrinking myself to fit my family's narrative to embracing my full self, acknowledged and valued. The metal chair that was meant to diminish me had instead become the catalyst for my liberation. And for that, despite everything, I was grateful. Have you ever experienced a moment when someone's attempt to humiliate you backfired and ultimately led to positive change in your life? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if this resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the worst moments become turning points towards something better. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope it helps anyone going through similar family struggles know that better days, and better people, are waiting ahead.